What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we are here with Fang VonWrathenstein of Lords of the Trident. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming on the show today.
It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, any opportunity I have to discuss video games and heavy metal is always an opportunity that I'm going to take.
Hell yeah.
So first thing is always first, though. We do got the video game EP, V.G.E.P, coming out October 1st. Is this meant to sort of just like hold fans over while we wait for like a full-length follow-up to the offering? Or is this meant to be kind of like a signal, like a turning point or like a new chapter for Lords of the Trident?
No, I think probably the first one is more true. We had a bunch of songs that were left over from the writing process during the offering that just didn't really fit the vibe. The offering is a little bit more of like a tragic tale, so we wanted some darker material, and we had some other material that we'd written during the process that we were just like, wow, it doesn't quite fit like the vibe we're going for. But they were good songs. We didn't want to get rid of them, so we were originally thinking about maybe we'll do some B-sides for a Japan release for something, but then we had a bunch of them, and we were sort of like, let's throw together an EP, while we're in the process of writing the next album. So yeah, it's more of that, more of that kind of like interstitial kind of stuff between albums. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel like, I mean, the video game EP? Do you feel like is this a theme that has always been something you wanted to express? Because while I do see some of it present in, Frostburn or Power Outage or Shadows from the past,
Yep.
they kind of have their own things that make them stand out. This is meant to just kind of like completely be fun in a way, or like kind of like not to be overthought.
Yeah. I mean, we've always written about the stuff that inspires us, and video games, obviously, and the stories from video games are something that is a big inspiration to us. This is not the first time, for example, we've written a song about Final Fantasy VI. That was Figaro from Shadows from the Past. So, To Kill a God, it kind of continues in that theme of Final Fantasy VI theme songs. But we've always done
in America.
We've always done a little bit of that sort of bringing in ideas and themes from games that we love without being super overt about it. Like we don't necessarily call out the name of the video game or any of the main characters, kind of a thing, in any of the songs that we write that are about video games. So this was an opportunity to kind of take some of those songs and make them specifically overtly sort of more themed towards the games, but still to do it in that style that we normally do, where we're not being like, Jack Grind Radio, come on baby, Jack, like we're not doing stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, I think, like with the sort of like a power metal thing, because first off, video games have been expressed as a concept, whether it be the whole themes band like Power Glove, or like, certain bands like Vintersea, the prog band that, was inspired by video games for really just one specific album. So
yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Do you almost like when the making of something, when you're making an album or even a song, do you go into it with the vision in mind? Like, okay, we are going to make a song about Final Fantasy, or are there like more riffs sort of thrown around or arrangements already made before you know what the game is going to be incorporated?
Yeah, so typically what we do is we start with the music, and the music sort of informs the directionality of the themes that we go for. So, to give you a concrete example, before we came up with the whole idea of like the whole video game EP, I heard the riff from the song that later became To Kill a God, that sort of like, and I was like, that sounds a lot like the battle theme from Final Fantasy VI. Like that's, and so that, that idea informed the directionality of it. But typically we'll get a demo from the Baron, or we'll get some riffs from Aki, and we will put the music together first. And then I'll sit and listen to it and be like, okay, what is this? What exactly does this remind me of? What sort of themes does this bring up? Just listening to the music by itself. And then I'll write to that. And if I ever run out of, general ideas for themes, Aki is a really great wellspring of those sort of off the cuff, ideas for songs. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, because I've always said that video games, music, and porn, those are the three things where you will never it's impossible for a person to live to experience all the music in the world, to play all the video games ever made. One
Yep.
console alone has a lifetime's worth of games on it. And porn.
Absolutely.
And porn. They keep making more and more and more of it, but you'll never be able to experience all of it. So
You can't keep up.
yeah. But is there ever a time though where maybe your own personal life or your own personal experiences are a source of inspiration for the music as well? Or do you kind of use do you almost kind of use Lords of the Trident as a means of like escapism where you don't want to really bring your daily average life into it?
Yeah, I think no matter what you do, any musician who says that they don't bring anything from their daily life, into their writing is probably lying to themselves. I mean, when we were talking about, if we talk about The Offering, a lot of those darker themes really came from a lot of the stuff that was going on, between, let's say, 2016 and like 2021, the pandemic and all the sort of division that happened. So, that really informed the directionality of the lyrics and even some of the melodies, being a bit darker. So, yeah, I typically, try to bring in a little bit of my own personality, a little bit of my own lived experiences into these songs as much as possible. And I think with the new record we're working on right now, it'll continue that trend. I think there's a specific theme, maybe not necessarily like a concept or a storyline, but there is a specific theme that will sort of encapsulate all of these songs, at least if it goes the way that I think it'll, that I currently have it planned, and a lot of that theme does come from lived experiences, from daily life, from myself, from the other band members. So yeah, I think adding in our own sort of personal flavor to it is an important part of what connects people to the music, because that sort of shared human experience is something that we all go through. And in a way, it's very nice to be able to see that, another human being, and especially maybe a human being in a band that you look up to, has gone through something similar that maybe you're experiencing right now. I think that's one of the very awesome, like, connecting powers of music. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, you couldn't be more right, because I've always said, and I'm not like saying this in a negative way by any stretch of the means, but bands like Lords of the Trident, or a band like Glory Hammer, or Ailstorm, or Power Glove, or anything like that, I don't take them serious. Obviously, I respect the technical proficiency, and I have a great time at the shows and all this, but I feel like, I go to see a death metal concert or like, a doom metal show, I'm going there to resonate with the anger and the real actual feelings that I feel. Where I go to like a Lord of the Trident show and I feel like I'm going there as a means to engage in a fantasy in a way, you know what I mean? Like, like nobody's going to, this is going to sound derogatory, but I mean it as a compliment. Nobody's going to Chuck E. Cheese to resonate with their real life. Nobody's going there because this resonates with me in the hardships that I felt. Like So
there are very few cry pits at Lords of the Trident shows. Let's just say, right?
Yeah. Do you feel though, by going as Fang VonWrathenstein, but having all these other characters in a way, do you feel like that you are portraying a character, that this isn't who the man who we see in the Zoom call of Ty Christian?
It's. I'm in my mortal alias right now, right? So that the fans don't overtake us and consume us or chase us down like the Beatles. But no, Fang is really a huge part of myself, my own character. I think a lot of people, when they go on stage, whether they're playing a character or not, it's always supposed to be themselves turned up to 11, right? I think that's the best way to both be comfortable with yourself on stage, right, and also feel like what you are doing on stage is genuine and true, true to yourself, true to who you are. So yeah, Fang is definitely Ty, but with a lot more armor and fire and explosions and confetti and really turned all the way up. So the tie in the interview right now is a little bit more on a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got to tell you, because I've always been, and I've been criticized on YouTube for it, but I stand behind it. I've always been the serious interviewer, where like I want to know what the thought process is, what driven you to like. I like to get deep into the creative process. So when I'm interviewing a band like Guar, for example, it gets a little bit. You kind of have to like. Feel like I have to almost kind of like bring the non-serious aspect into myself in a way. And I've gotten better over the years and learned to laugh more, but like in the end, you just like bands can't be serious all the time. The interviewer can't be serious all the time. But again, I find that the music is very technically impressive. I listen to those riffs and those arrangements, the rhythmic contributions, the vocal ranges. I mean, it's all very impressive to listen to. Super well composed and very, very well crafted. So there has to be, despite the humor that's demonstrated that we see in stuff and the character, is there like a moment of seriousness in a way? Like I'd imagine that when you're in the studio or you're rehearsing or practicing, you're not really in full character. You're kind of more focused on the song itself, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We take, what we wanted to do when we started Lords of the Trident is we wanted to take both aspects of the live performance as seriously as possible. We wanted to take the music as serious as possible and the performance and I mean that in terms of putting together a show, right? So a Lords of the Trident show is full of a lot of extras that you normally wouldn't get at like a jeans and t-shirt metal band show. We've got the armor, we've got the fire, we've got the swords, we've got the confetti, we've got all that sort of stuff. The main impetus behind that, right, is that obviously we want to write serious music that we love, that is, that if you had a blindfold on and you didn't hear or you didn't see the band, right, you could take that music 100% seriously. You could think of that as being written by like, let's just say like a normal quote unquote metal band, right? But the band itself kind of grew up in an area and a situation where it wasn't a very metal friendly community, or at least the metal scene in Madison, Wisconsin, where we're from at the time we started was not really existent all that much. And so we were fighting for crowds with, jam bands and stuff that like, Joe Frat House would go see. And so the idea is like, okay, if we can't hook them with, a poster that says metal show on it, at least we could, dress up in these gigantic costumes with, these lightning in the background and fire and all that sort of stuff. And people would come out to the shows just to see the show, even if they weren't necessarily interested in the genre we were playing. And honestly, that worked tremendously. We had so many people that came out to the shows that were like, I didn't realize this was metal. I thought this was more like radio rock or hard rock, or like, I had a completely different concept of what metal was. And I'm like, well, as you and I know, metal is this gigantically broad, extremely all-encompassing, over genre. And you can get metal that sounds like, something you hear on the radio, or you can get metal that sounds like the most absolutely unlistenable, indescribable, screeching sounds. And that is all considered metal. But I think generally people don't have that view of metal, at least people who are not inside of a metal genre, metal community. They just think of metal as dudes like with pointy guitars, angry at their dad, going like, And so that can be difficult when you're playing an environment where people are more used to jam and more used to like alternative rock, to get people out to shows.
Well,
so when we were doing that, we sort of like said, okay, let's make sure that the music is serious and good, and we take a lot of time and effort into making well-crafted songs, but we also take a lot of time and effort into making a well-crafted show so that people can enjoy both, enjoy either, can come out no matter what.
And I'm so glad to hear you mention that, and that's definitely needed to be said. And I wanted to mention, I was going to ask you how the scene was in Madison, Wisconsin, but you just answered that question, got that out of the way. Thank you.
It's much better now. Way better.
But I wanted to mention that too, because when I think of Wisconsin, I'm thinking of Misery Signals and Jungle Rot. How many times, though, like, I'll just confess, maybe it has to do with Freeman working your press, but like, I just listen, I see the title Lord of the Trident, I listen to the music, and I'm like, oh, these guys probably another Swedish or Danish band. Maybe they're from the UK. But no, you guys have the same fate as Ether Realm, a band that comes from North Carolina, and
Yep.
they have to sell shirts that says "We are not from Finland." So
Yep. I've got one of those shirts.
yeah, but like it's true. I mean, how many people assume you're from? I thought you were another European metal band on Napalm Records, and you were hitting the road with Camelot very soon. So
Yeah, we've gotten that more often than I would have thought. But yeah, there were a lot of people who were like, "Oh, I thought you were from, Germany, or I thought you were from, Finland or something like that." Especially when we went over to the on our European tour, we made sure to plaster like like U.S. flags all over the stuff so that people knew
Made in America
where we were from. Yeah, right. So yeah, but we do get that mixed up from time to time for sure.
Yep. Now this has been a new question I've been asking bands, and it's on the topic of gimmicks. Now, people are going to accuse Lords of the Trident of having a gimmick thing. I mean, let's just be real. And by the way, but my question is, do you think gimmick is derogatory? Do you think when people say that this band is a gimmick, that they say it like it's a bad... Look, GWAR is a gimmick, whether you like it or not. But I love their music. I listen to their music. I'll take a band that's a little like Slipknot is a gimmick, whether you like it or not. But their music is incredible. So like, I think a lot of bands that are gimmicks in a way, just because I don't think gimmick necessarily means a bad thing. Now, I also do believe that music, not to quote Chad from Nickelback, but music shouldn't always have to come with a gimmick either. So do you feel like that there is a balance? Do you think A, being called a gimmick is a bad thing, and B, do you think that maybe there is a balance involved?
I think intrinsically, having somebody call you, say that you have a gimmick is typically seen as a bad thing. But I don't necessarily. I think that having a gimmick to your band is something that is at least important from a marketing perspective. I think that if you, especially for new bands, and I've talked about this, a lot at music conferences and stuff like that, especially for new bands, if you're not paying attention to, how you are perceived visually, then you're missing 50% of what you are doing on stage. They call it a show because you're supposed to show something. They don't call it a listen, right? So I think that having a gimmick, is in some ways like freeing from a marketing and from a fan kind of almost like fan conglomeration or fan grouping perspective. Slipknot has their maggots, right? We have our minions, and Powerwolf has their wolf pack or whatever, right? But I think a lot of bands that have those gimmicks are able to move them into something that is a lot more easily marketable. Not to get all band business on it for a second here, but it's a lot easier to make a T-shirt for Lords of the Trident than it is for your standard jeans and T-shirt metal band, because we have a lot more options, a lot more ways we can go. We have a lot more characters in the band that we can pull on. We have a lot more, things that we do on stage. Same goes for, Powerwolf. Same goes for like the Darkness even. I mean, the Darkness, when they came out, they definitely had a gimmick, that kind of like 80s throwback leotard kind of, look. But it did them well. It's done Powerwolf well. It's done Slipknot well. So I have a feeling that a lot of the sort of ill will towards the idea of a gimmick, right, kind of stems from the area in the 90s where things got, a lot less fun.
Well,
there was... go ahead.
I wanted to mention, so take the 80s hair metal, right?
Right.
Cinderella, Motley Crue, Poison, you name it. Everybody was dressing like that at the time. So it's not so much of it wasn't so much of a gimmick back then. Steel Panther, it makes it a gimmick. They're making a gimmick out of the times. But I wanted to point out, too, I think it has to do with your style. Put it to you this way. If you came out dressed the way you were and, had the same imagery and everything, but you were making hardcore music, I would find it a little bit like almost insulting. But I
Yeah.
think, but now look at your band, look at Battle Beast, look at Powerwolf, look at Twilight Force, look at Blind Guardian. A lot of these bands have a persona or like. I feel like it is almost essential in a way. I wouldn't want a band like you guys showing up in the jeans and t-shirt, as you mentioned.
You'd lose something. You'd lose a little bit of the fantastical, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's almost like I feel like when I go to I'm not using the genre labeling, but like for lack of better words, the power metal show, I am going for the sakes of being entertained. I wouldn't want Ailstorm to sing pirate metal without looking like pirates.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So that's sort of like my perspective on it.
Yeah, but I think just in general, I think there's more of a stigma towards bands that do that sort of fantastical stuff, maybe outside the power metal genre, right?
Because I do think that Marilyn Manson did it. He did it right. He killed it with it. That doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else. Like, I will admit, and again, my own personal opinion, I had a conversation with September Morning about this. Power metal, by all means, go all fucking crazy with it and all that. But certain bands like the Marilyn Manson clones or the Mudvayne clones or the bands trying to almost bring back the Cold Chamber clones and stuff like that, that to me I think comes off a little bit copycat because your music doesn't sound completely similar, but your look does. You at least have your own songs that sound like I won't hear those melodies in another power metal song. At least you have still your own individuality to it, in a way.
Yep.
So that's my opinion on it. But did you want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think it's interesting when there's somebody in the genre with such a big impact, like for instance Marilyn Manson, and that look and that feel that hadn't been done before or really done before to that extent, and then you come in and you kind of ape that same sort of style, with another band. Yeah, it does come off as a little non-genuine, but I think with power metal we're a little bit more free because it's basically like Dungeons and Dragons the genre, so we can pull from a lot of like fantasy tropes and that kind of stuff to create the style. So it's a little bit with Lords of the Trident, you can't look at us and say like he's wearing armor and like point to one specific band and be like he's doing an exact copy of that band, right? That you could with like Marilyn Manson.
There's one band in particular, I'm not going to mention them on this, but you could get an idea that I think is sort of cloning it. They're huge now and good for them, but me personally, I think it comes off a little disingenuous. But my 2 cents, and we'll let the viewers decide what band I'm referencing. But the final question I just wanted to ask you is video games. So, is there do you think video games have been making a cultural impact the same way that music has been in a way? Because people tend, especially the older generation has accepted that music, regardless of what you're listening to, makes an impact. But some still frown at the idea of video games making an impact. But like,
I was telling my wife, and we've had conversations about this over and over and over again. I'm glad that I ended up living in the timeline where video games were eventually considered art. I remember growing up, I had a Nintendo, I had the Super Nintendo. I just grew up in that era. And I kept playing games. I was a huge gamer. I was both console and PC gamer, and I loved video games. And, there was something about that way of storytelling that really nothing else was doing at the time. There were a lot of really innovative things in the way of just basic storytelling that video games could do that other mediums couldn't. And I think Final Fantasy VI for me was like one of the first games that really showed me how like epic a tale you could tell with video games, and how serious and amazing and just the experience of playing through a game like that is really transformative. I very, very strongly believe that video games and the music from video games especially is nowadays definitely more considered art than something frivolous. And I think it will continue in that direction. Aside from being the singer in Lords of the Trident, I also sing for the Sonic Symphony, the Sonic the Hedgehog Symphony. So we fly around and, sing to like 3,000 to 4,000 people a night, doing Sonic the Hedgehog music. And if that was not if Sonic the Hedgehog music is not a legitimate art form, or doesn't convey, actual emotions to people, I don't know why we're playing to 3,000 to 4,000 people a night. It's clearly made an impact to a bunch of people, myself included. So it's one of those things where I'm so happy that you have the sort of legitimatization, I suppose, of video games as an art form, of people morphing game music and using it in amazing ways, like the 8-bit big band, like Sonic Symphony, like all that sort of stuff. Distant Worlds with Final Fantasy. It really is an amazing time for someone who grew up in the 80s and grew up, sort of being called a nerd and being made fun of for liking video games. It's an amazing time to be alive for those type of people, for me included. So yeah, absolutely.
No, absolutely. There's been a whole cultural around it. I mean, the Angry Video Game Nerd, one of the greatest YouTubers ever, has been doing it for 20 years now. And Sonic the Hedgehog Symphony, I wanted to mention that. Are you ever going to play What I'm Made Of by Crush 40? Would you ever sing that one?
Oh, I've sang it many times. Yeah. I love that song. Yeah, that's a great song.
Because that song was almost my gateway into metal. So
there you go.
Like I think how many video games have brought in real bands as well. How many people just
now have you heard? Have you heard the newest like Sonic music from Sonic Frontiers? Because that's all like metalcore.
Oh yeah. Well, didn't they get the guy from Sleeping with Sirens as on?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Kellen Quinn. Yeah.
Yeah. So he fucking killed it. Like I think those songs are amazing, and the trippy. What I love about Sonic music is that they really went all different genres, from techno to symphonic to rock. Like any genre works for Sonic the Hedgehog.
I'll tell you what, that's the thing that makes it so difficult and so much fun as a singer to be in the Sonic Symphony, is that, every night I'm performing, I have to perform like 7 different genres and I have to voice 7 different genres. So I have to do everything from like grunge rock to like metalcore screamo. It is an insane workout to do one of those shows as a singer, because you can't just sit in one genre. You have to be very broad. So yeah, that's part of the fun too. It makes it really fun.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for such an awesome conversation. And most of all, thank you for just your music in general, like just what you've done with Sonic Symphony and with Lords of the Trident. Like, thank you for your music. Is there just anything else with the release of the video game EP that you'd like to promote, like upcoming shows, tours that you're allowed to talk about at this moment, of course?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got, so obviously the V.G.E.P is coming out on October 1st. If people listening want to grab it ahead of time, they can by getting on our patreon.com/Lords of the Trident. If you sign up at the $5 level, you not only get that EP, but you get the last 4 full albums. You get 25, 27 live albums, a bunch of singles. We give away a lot of stuff on the Patreon, because it is the main thing that kind of keeps the band going. So check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Lords of the Trident. And yeah, at the end of the year in December, we are going to be going on a 2-week Japan tour with our good buddies in Seven Spires, going all around Japan. And we did our first Japan tour in December 2022, so we're looking forward to getting back. We sold out like half the shows on that first tour, so I'm hoping we can sell out all the shows this time coming around. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then, I can't say exactly what it is yet, but we've got some inklings for some longer tours in 2025 with certain bands that you may have heard of. So yeah, nothing concrete on that yet.
You'll tell me as soon as I turn the recorder off.
Sure, yeah.
But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Lords of the Trident. Be sure to check out the video game EP out October 1st. Pick it up then when supplies last forever. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.